Since 1999, the Venezuelan people have been charting a new course for their country. The direction that Venezuela is taking has earned the hatred and contempt from the US and its cronies around the world, including the Australian government. But it must be said, the real hatred comes from the multinational corporations at the helm of these governments, the likes of Chevron, BP, Shell, because we must remember that Venezuela is rich in oil, and we must ask ourselves how many wars are being fought for oil and control of the world's energy resources, and is this the main aim of the hatred of that these governments have for Venezuela? Venezuela continues down the path, charting its own course, and refuses to capitulate to the demands of big business. As a result, embargoes are being put on Venezuela that are crippling the economy of that country. The Venezuelan Solidarity Campaign runs a number of campaigns to support the Venezuelan people, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about those later. But first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody and introduce our guest speaker, which is Daniel Gasparri. My name is Helen Woolley. I have been, and with me tonight for this conversation with Daniel is Joe Montero, and we are both members of the Venezuelan Solidarity Campaign here in Melbourne. This conversation that we're having with Daniel is to re-understand what's happening in Venezuela, how things are changing, how the process is continuing in Venezuela, and how things are affecting the Venezuelan people with the embargoes and so on. So it's with great pleasure that we have Daniel with us tonight, and he's been with us to a number of events, and he's always well up to date with what's going on in Venezuela. So welcome very much, Daniel. And hello, Joe. How are you going tonight?
I'm doing very well. I hope you are as well. And of course, Daniel should mention that Daniel is representing the Venezuela's embassy in Canberra.
I did forget that. I was. I'm assuming that everybody knows Daniel just because I simply do. So, Joe, would you like to kick off with a question for Daniel?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, at the end of last year, Venezuela had an election, which most people, well, anybody who was there, as far as we know, said it was above board and fair. Now, the government, the new government has passed a law making it illegal for citizens of Venezuela to actually engage a foreign government to interfere in internal politics and to support an invasion from another nation. Could you say a few words on that?
Well, that thing it's just. Oh, thank you for the invitation, and apologies for. I need to acknowledge the words of Helen and the work that LastNet do and the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign do for Venezuela, and Joe, the honor is mine to be with you today, sharing our reality, our thoughts, which are quite different from the one that you can see at the Australian media, and the news, which are very different what they show from my country, from the reality. You know this very well because the three of you have been several times in Venezuela. You watch with your eyes what happened there many, many times. So you are a good witness as what I mentioned here. But the most important thing, certainly, as Helen mentioned before, it's Venezuela is a very rich country. And it's a very rich country with the biggest reserve of oil in the world, which is the only reason that we are facing this situation today. It's not new for us. We have been being prepared for this since more than 20 years. When we decided to change it, as Helen said, we in 1998, we decided to change the direction of the country. We decided to take a better use on the resources from our country, to do a better distribution of them in our population. Of course, people decided to have a quite different country. That doesn't like to many other big countries in the world. And of course, many multinational countries were not happy with this. especially those who were doing good business before with previous governments. But well, we were ready for this. We know that this could happen, and certainly now, even though we have all these much amount of oil under the soil in my country, we are struggling economically, talking very hard, and people is very strong, as you know. Even on bad situations like this, they understand very well what's happening, and they know how unfair it is. And there's no any way from, the big countries to change the way we choose, the way we are. There's not going to be any other way for them to change this after all this time. We are very strong. We will resist. And we know that sooner or later, the big empires will change their mind regarding those countries like Venezuela and many others who are on the same path, and many of them are coming. It's not a secret for you what's happening in other countries of the region, like Chile and Peru. And never in the past we will imagine that Peru can have a left president. And see what's happening in Colombia, for example. So there's no doubt what's going to happen next year in Brazil. So things are changing. Mexico, Nicaragua is a must to mention, and many others. So Latin America has been always a region of people that are struggling for independence, and that's what the history shows. And we are very strong and very committed to find our independence again after 200 years. So certainly, Helen, yes, big companies are doing their best to try to do a coup and take President Maduro and previous President Chavez from government, but it's something that is not going to happen easily. People is very conscious. We have learned a lot in all these years, and we are very well prepared to face this and many other situations that we can affront. So I don't know if I answered your question, Joe, but I hope I do. And but it's just a thing of oil, of minery, which makes us interested from these big countries. There's not other reason.
Yeah, I think the context is great, and really what might astound people who are not in Venezuela, in a country like Australia, is that there are some elements who actually invite openly someone else to actually take over running their country, foreigners, which an act was passed through the parliament not long ago in Australia, actually making that illegal. So there is a bit of a parallel there, maybe a double standard in that. Yeah. But certainly you've answered the questions. Look, can I just ask something which is a different topic? Because one thing that's got me, I know, and other people find out when they hear, is the case of Alex Saab, who's also in the diplomatic service, and really what they've done to him. Yeah.
It's very unfair what happened with him. Actually, he is on a diplomatic service. He's an ambassador, and he has diplomatic privilege. And under the Vine Convention, this privilege has not been recognized by Cabo Verde, where he's now in jail. He on his way to Turkey, he did a stop on this country, and he was on a very unfair way caught by the police. But it's very obvious what's happening with him. Cabo Verde is receiving a lot of pressure from US in order to keep him there, and there are many proofs. We can put them all, and they are online. It's nothing difficult to find out that they are getting a lot of money to the government of Cabo Verde to ask them to remain him, to request the government to keep him on jail. And we have a lot of decisions from many, tribunals, from Africa Tribunal, from the CEDAW Tribunal, from all of them, and they are still keeping him in jail as they have a lot of pressure and, of course, a lot of interest from U.S. in keeping them. There's no way for them to extradite him to U.S. That's not going to happen. The only criminal activity he did is try to help us to struggle with our blockade from U.S. And certainly because U.S. don't support any activity who can, any way support our country with this against the blockade, they will try to, persecute him, which is happening now. But I'm very sure also that the ambassador will be very strong. After a year, he's still very strong. He's also struggling with the health, but and other issues, which is very large to explain. But certainly, he didn't get the attention that he required. But sooner or later, I'm very sure that he's going to be back home and continue working for the Bolivarian revolution, as he did very well for all these years.
Excellent, excellent. So it's almost a parallel with how the British government is keeping the money and the gold that belongs to the Venezuelan people, and so now not only are they keeping money and gold from the Venezuelan people, but they're also keeping their their ambassadors and their representatives, locking them up as well. And so that kind of leads on to the next question that I wanted to ask Daniel in terms of the economy. How are the people coping with the economic situation and the embargoes that the United States has imposed on Venezuela?
It's very difficult, Helen. Actually, to buy the vaccines, we have been struggling with banks. The bank system in the world, unfortunately, is controlled by U.S. Network. So if you do a transfer, even though from Australia to any other country, and many people don't know this, but when you transfer from one bank to another one, you are being in either way, your money will get through a U.S. bank. So imagine how big is the control of the money that moves around the world if everything goes through U.S. So even though to buy the vaccine, to buy the medicines, to buy the food, to buy the most basic things is so difficult. And well, there's other good examples like Cuba. They have been struggling with this 60 years. So the big difference between what's happened with Cuba and that happens with us today is that actually we have been under this blockade. We says measures, coercive measures, which is the right word, but actually embargo and blockade is how people usually know it. Since only the real ones have been only 5-6 years. That means that for us has been like a big accelerator, like if you jump into your car, you turn it on and you go for full to 120. For Cuba to get from 0 to 120, they take maybe 30-40 years. For us has been only in 4 or 5 years. So for us was more difficult because we were certainly far away to get used to this. We didn't have the chance to get used to this. And Cuba has a lot, not only Cuba, I can mention Syria, Iran, many other countries in the world, which there are more than 45 countries that have embargoes from US. But for us was everything very new, and actually here at Australia to maintain the embassy, to get our structure here, to get the service to Venezuelans, which they require from us, is so difficult. Not anywhere where you go, it's the system, the U.S. bank system is involved. So it's so difficult to struggle with a blockade that sooner or later, I think that the international community, as they did with Cuba recently, only 2 weeks ago, they will. I'm very sure. They will not allow, they will not support these kind of measures anymore. It's very unfair. Only because you are strong, because you are the big, policeman of the world. You are in the right to blockade a country, and because they don't follow you. Because the other thing is, because you don't follow me, you are not my friend. I will do all this against you. And at the eyes of the world, which is, on the time, less and less blind. The world is realizing what's happening. People is not blind anymore, and people is changing a lot. If you go around and you watch, you see, you hear, even in Australia, many people is changing because they realize that things, a better world is possible. And certainly it could not be only one big country who controls the world. It's not fair at all.
That's right. Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Well, that kind of leads on to my next question. So I'll just jump in with this, Joe, if you don't mind. So there was a vote in the UN just recently opposing the embargoes on Cuba. And that really is exactly what you were saying, that people are waking up around the world seeing that, it's unfair that there's just one country that can dominate the world. How do you think that vote is going to translate into an end to the embargoes for Venezuela?
I didn't get the question, but can you explain me better? Sorry.
Okay. So how do you that vote in the UN that a lot of countries oppose the embargoes on Cuba, how is that going to help Venezuela?
There's not a different embargo on Cuba than in Venezuela. It's not a different embargo on Venezuela than in Syria. It's the same. It's not a different one. And, there are many ways, but finally, when you just have all together in the same box, it's the same embargo. There's no difference. And actually, we can talk about many other countries. But I don't want to bring this to the attention, but it's happening to Nicaragua too. To Bolivia, it's going to happen very soon. You're going to see it. Sooner or later, it's coming to Bolivia too. It's just because they don't follow the rules from the big, policemen of the world. But if this will, but actually, again, I said before, if the countries are changing, the people is changing. So people don't understand why this is happening. People have the right to, to just think different. And you don't need to impose me the way you think and the way you are in order to do things as you want me to do it. And Venezuela and Cuba has a long history of peace, and it's a peaceful country with a lot of, history of peace, facts that we are not a war country. We have been supporting many countries. We have a country of solidarity. So there's no reason when President Chavez was still alive, and you all know this, Venezuela, even actually today, we were giving solidarity for the Caribbean. We promote also the structures of integration in the Latin American region, like CARICOM, like UNASUR, which is actually Mercosur, which is still alive. And we support them, and we were a country which understand very well that the big countries need to support the smallest economies of the region, because that's the way we see the world. But certainly for the big empire, we don't share that view of the life of the world, and that's the only the only bad thing we did, and of course we don't follow the rules. But again, Helen, the whole world is changing, and this is not possible, to be for many more years. Sooner than later, if the multilateral system works as it should work, and I believe in that, of course, if they follow what they decided, they should raise the embargo as soon as possible. Only 4 countries in the world vote against, against Cuba.
Yeah.
We know what I mean. You know how many countries, if you check the list of the 200 countries that vote, you will see who they are. Actually, Great Britain, which is the border of US, Australia, which is very close to US, is voting against them, and many others. I mean, Europe, which nobody can say that, socialism is the path chosen by many of these countries. So it's not a political thing. It's just a human rights thing. So political things, we can have difference, we can debate, we can talk, and we can get into an agreement. But this is not a political thing. This is just a human rights thing. And what is happening with Cuba and Venezuela on these times, with the measures, with these economic measures, is very unfair. Very, very unfair.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel. John?
With that, I mean, you know, I've seen a figure of something like 54 countries that got some form of coercive economic measure put on them by the United States currently. So it's more than a quarter of the nations on this planet.
That's right.
That's a hell of a lot. Yeah. I'd like to change the focus a little bit, and there is a growing interest on the Comuna movement in Venezuela for other people. That's basically, we're talking about grassroots cooperative movement. Now, 2 laws were passed, I believe, on the 30th of April. One is to give more authority to the communal councils at the local level, but also to continue with a law relating to the National Constituent Assembly, to give it some power to actually investigate, come up with some decisions to pass on as recommendations. Could you say something about those two? What is the Comuna movement and how's it going?
Sure.
And how is the Constituent Assembly going?
They are very necessary laws, Joe, as you know, to empower the people. It's one of the core, you know, the core of the government will be to empower the people in order to put the power on the most number of people. And certainly, if we can do that, and that was bring to the attention of President Chavez, who bring this to the people. People today in Venezuela, they are very well organized, and they are getting better organized every time. So the way that you get more and more organized, I mean, on the root level, on the the roots level, that will be much better, because you can reduce also the bureaucracy, you know, from the government. And when you reduce the bureaucracy from the government, you also reduce corruption. You reduce a lot of things which are certainly not good for the people. And you get the power to the people who should have it, not to the bureaucrats, you know, not to one person who has control of what's, you know, the destinies of the people. So in this case, Joe, these laws are very important. They are part of the path of the revolution. We are transiting through this path, and I'm very sure that people, once they, you know, get used to these laws, they will they take advantage of them, and people will be more empowered. And that's the path. We are moving forward to the path to empower the people, and the majority of the people, which is the most important, that to empower bureaucrats, you know.
One interesting development also, Daniel, has been the free economic zones. Can you tell us whether you think that's, or well, rather not whether you personally think it, but some people, particularly on the left, are suggesting that it could be a possible move to the right. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, usual. Many people thought that because of President Chavez is not still alive, and they, for any reason, they want to, you know, adverse President Maduro. They used to say that President Maduro is moving to the right. It's completely false. President Maduro, at this stage, he hasn't taken any decision, which I'm sure that President Chavez will take. Times change, and when time change, certainly you need to change too. So Venezuela is not the same one that on the 2002, 2003, 2001, we were a very rich country with a oil and a very high price. A lot of dollars and were coming to Venezuela. So certainly, in order to get advantage, you know, of our reality, we need to move sometimes and take decisions which are not very well accepted by all of us. But finally, I'm very sure that people will accept it, they'll understand it, and they need to realize that it's not the same time, and we are not facing the same moments that President Chavez faced in the early 2000s. So it's difficult to take some decisions. It's difficult sometimes to see how the US dollar has been in any way, replacing the Bolivar, which is our local currency. But any effort that the government does in order to maintain the currency, circulating from outside, it will come any effort in order to devaluate it, to depreciate it, and of course that impacts a lot the salary and the income of the people. So, and I mentioned this because this is one of the things that some people regret about, the decisions of the President Maduro. But if President Chavez will be still alive at this time, I'm very sure under these circumstances he will do the same. There's not other way. We discussed it between us many times. I discussed it with the community in Venezuela. There's not other way. At this time, we need, for example, the foreign currency. And to have foreign currency, we need to, get use of them. And that's what we are trying to do now. Our accounts in Europe and in US, they have been kidnapped with all the money of the states, our gold in London. Our companies in US like Citgo and the company Monómeros in Colombia, which was a very productive company, they put it on the hands of the self-proclaimed president, and he bankrupted. So we are not that same country that we were 10 or 20 years ago. Things have changed, and of course, looking to that path that we mentioned before, there are some decisions that need to be taken, and President Maduro is taking certainly the right path. There's not other path. Even if you think that we can move to the right, it's just a decision that we need to take because of we need to protect our people, to think on them, and certainly the government does a big effort every day in order to take care of the people who needs more, and that's the priority of President Maduro. I'm very, very sure of that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Daniel. It's a great explanation. Thank you.
And I think it is a great explanation as well. Sometimes you have to bend to the realities before you a little bit. It doesn't mean you're on a different path. It means sometimes you've got to detour a little bit.
That's right.
And it's really up to everyone to keep it on the path. It's not only one person. Which brings up the question of international solidarity. I mean, how important is that to Venezuela and the people of Venezuela?
It's very important. Being honest, one of the main reasons are for us to be here in Australia and stay here is because of you. The priority of this embassy is to work close to the people, to work close to the people of Australia and let them understand what's the reality of our country. Of course, we have other, issues here, which are our Venezuelan compatriots who live here. We have almost 7,000 Venezuelans that are in this country, which is not a big number if we compare with Colombia, Ecuador, or Mexico, or Chile, or El Salvador. But still, it's a number which is we look forward, to give the best service to them and keep them, update with their documents and anything you need. But solidarity is so important for us. Solidarity has been very helpful for us, and that's the history. Also, in the case of Cuba, which I mentioned before, solidarity has helped a lot because we are only 2 people here in this embassy. It's not very big, but with all the solidarity, I'm very sure, Joe, that we're more than 10 or 20,000 people that they help us, like you today, to let the Australian people know what's the reality of Venezuela and what's the reality of what's happening in the world. So if you watch, and I'm not entitled to talk about, Australian politics, but if you watch the Murdoch media here, I'm very sure you're not getting the best of what's happening in the world. So I think you understand my message today, but certainly you are more important for us than many other things that we do at the embassy. So thank you again. That's what I thank you every time again. And that's what I try to share with you as much as possible this time, because letting people know what's happening in my country is very important for us, and get the support of Australians and New Zealanders and Pacific people and Indonesians and everywhere. It's important for us. Every day, and as I mentioned before, every day we have more and more people supporting the Bolivarian revolution, as they know that it's just a decision that we took, and it's a fair decision into socialism, into taking care of the people, into looking forward to empower the people who has more necessity.
Beautiful. We've just about run out of time. So, and that's a glorious note to end on as well, Daniel. I would just, if anybody is watching, I would just like to tell people or recommend to people that they go and have a look at the Constitution of Venezuela, and I think also to go and have a look at the developments in Peru and read their documents, the Peru Libre documents for their new government. And they're absolutely inspiring, and they are the type of constitution that we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at change here in Australia, and how are we going to do that? And I think Central America and Latin America are the key hotspots for change, and the message in their constitutions are just fantastic. So I'd recommend that to anybody that gets a chance to see this this interview. So Daniel, I'd just like to tell our people what we're doing here in Melbourne and to support the process in Venezuela. Joe, before I do that, Joe, do you have any questions that you'd like to wrap up with, or any comments?
No, because Daniel he actually answered the next one as well that I had, and that was it. But look, I'd say while we're talking about Venezuela, it's not only it's a two-way street. I think countries like Venezuela carry tremendous lessons for everyone, and we can all learn from that, and we should. And on that note, well, I know it's one of the things you're going to mention, Helen, but as soon as COVID-19 lets us, or the restrictions around it, there will be an opportunity for people to go and actually be an eyewitness to what's going on over there, because there is an intention, as soon as we can, to send a delegation there. And really, if you can represent someone, then by all means get in touch with the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign and put your hand up.
Yeah. So as Joe said, we will be organising a trip to Venezuela whenever we can. We're also building a high priority for us this coming year is to build a childcare centre in a small rural village, and they asked us when we visited Venezuela in 2019 to help with that. So we promised that we would do that, and we're going to see through that promise. We're also working on doing a bit of a trade program where we can send some tradespeople over to Venezuela to help assist anywhere they can, and I think that'd be a great exchange for them to bring back knowledge of what's happening in Venezuela to the Australian workers, and let them know the possibilities of change as well. We're also
yeah, I think there's one. There is a possibility of sending some teachers there, actually to teach English as well at a rural agricultural college, and in return they can actually learn to speak Spanish.
Exactly.
That's an invitation that comes from this college, which we did visit. But also, if somebody wants to enrol in one of their courses, certificate, diploma, degree courses that they do have, they're more than welcome to participate as students as well, or if you just want to go there as a student.
Yeah. But yeah, certainly the childcare centre is our top priority for this coming year, and we'll be having fundraisers leading up to that. We'll be visiting unions and discussing Venezuela with the unions and so on. So we've got a few things on this year that we want to fulfill. And along with that, of course, we've got a campaign against the embargoes. So we're going to continue with that campaign. We want to get to see our local politicians and so on, and see where their position is, what their position is on Venezuela, and perhaps maybe make them change their minds about who they are going to support in Venezuela. We want to see them supporting the Maduro government, the legitimate government of Venezuela, and not the illegitimate government of Guaido, who seems to be losing a lot of ground anyway. But, you know, we want to try and make the Australian government recognise the true Venezuelan government. So those are some of the things that the Venezuelan Solidarity Campaign has going on in Melbourne. For any viewers that are watching, please feel free to come and join us. We need as much help as we can get. The Venezuelan people would thank you from the bottom of their hearts. So without anything further, thank you very much, Daniel, for coming along, sharing your thoughts, and thank you, Joe. And thank you to our tech guy behind the scenes, Lucho.
Thank you, Lucho. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Joe. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.